right, just as one more notification, we are live on YouTube. Links posted to the website. So I got 6:22 p.m. I got a little time here, but just letting everyone know.
Oh, hello.
Hi, Pat.
So this is Joe at head control over here. I only have 2 board members, it appears, so far. Just I'm waiting to admit people, but just FYI.
I know that the judge is coming from a student activity at Shortridge, so he's going to be cutting it pretty short, pretty tight.
It was really something when Zoom crashed this morning. Oh my God. All of our training. Just,
Oh,
yeah.
really?
So we were it came back up about 11 or something like that. So we were just about 2 hours behind. So you gotta just do what you gotta do. We were better off than Washington Township because they had to close down everything in terms of their students.
Hmm.
Yeah. Hello, Terry.
Hi.
How you doing?
Good. Survived
Good.
my first day of teaching and other things.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no problems with Zoom. I don't teach till the afternoon, so it was good.
There's a gentleman that's at your school. His name is Dr. Omari. He's head of like diversity and inclusion. I don't think he's been there that long. He sure knows you though. I'll get the right spelling of his name.
He's with the pharmacy school.
Yes, health. He's in health.
Yes.
Okay.
You
Ah,
know him.
okay.
Yes.
We got to do a presentation for the senators.
Yeah, I know him. He's been there. Might be going on his 3rd year.
Okay.
Second, 3rd year.
All right, folks, I hope everybody can hear me okay.
Ah, there he is.
Yeah.
Well, I've been here for at least 20 seconds. All right, I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and hopefully we can be mindful of the time and not run over an hour like we did last meeting.
You only got 3 people.
Never know. All right, I'm going to call this meeting. It is 6:30. Oh, hang on. You mean board members, you mean, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's a different thing.
4.
That's a different thing here. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, I don't see 5. Okay.
There's 6. We're just missing TD, that's all.
Okay.
My apologies. That is important, Dr.
You are
Graham.
all there.
I am here.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Everyone is there.
All right, folks. Thank you so much. I hope everyone is staying indoors and being safe as best they can. Today is August 24th. This is the August meeting of the Indianapolis Public Library Board. I'm going to call this meeting to order. The regular meeting is now called to order. Angie, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Biederman,
Present.
Mr. Bigsby,
Ray, Curtis, you're muted.
All right, sorry about that. Present.
thank you. Dr. Jett,
Here.
Dr. Murtada,
Present.
thank you. Ms. Payne,
Here.
Reverend Robinson,
Present.
and Judge Salinas.
Present.
We have a quorum.
We do have a quorum. Our first item for the evening is the branch manager's report. Ms. Ayers is the manager of Pike Township Library and will now provide a report with respect to her lovely branch. I'm going to apologize on behalf of the board that we can't be there in person. My apologies, Ms. Ayers.
Okay.
You're muted, Ms. Ayers. We can't hear you.
Okay, are we good now?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Well, Judge Salinas, members of the board, staff, and guests, I appreciate this opportunity to highlight Pike Branch and expand a bit on something I mentioned in the report you received in your packet. Pike Library has had a long history of large numbers of teens using the branch as a hangout and a waiting place after school. This often resulted in teens being disruptive or acting inappropriately to the point where police had to be involved. Non-teen patrons complained and avoided the branch, and staff was unable to concentrate on helping the patrons. Different solutions were sought, offering programs, having security guards, opening the meeting room as a teen space after school, and hiring off-duty police officers. Some things worked better than others, but nothing really engaged the teens. This year, we're attempting something different. A public services specialist, Tyrone Chandler, has been hired with the focus of interacting with and engaging the students that visit the library after school. He will use his experience and expertise in dealing with teenagers, as well as his skill in community building, to create relationships and offer programs that are of particular use to these teens. While we're not sure what volume of activity we will have once Pike High School resumes in-person classes, we feel that with Tyrone's help, we can make the Pike Library a place where teens visit for a purpose rather than just a stopping place between home and school. Are there any questions?
But that sure sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, I would
Well-
ask that you TV keep some stats. If it works in your branch, maybe we could see about complementing that in other branches.
Oh, we'll definitely keep statistics, and we'll keep a good eye on it.
What did you say his title was?
His job title is Public Services Specialist.
Okay.
And what was his background? What can you give us a little history with Mr. Chandler, please?
He's got, I don't have his resume in front of me, unfortunately, but he has been a teacher. He's been a dean of students. He has coached teen football. He has worked with the Indy, what is it? He's worked with the Indiana Youth Institute. He has his own nonprofit that works to provide extracurricular learning and activities for students. And he said that when COVID hit, the nonprofit realized that a lot of the students, had been going to school and getting their meals at school. Because of COVID and school not being in session, these kids were missing meals. So his nonprofit has used their clout or their knowledge of different groups around town to solicit help in providing over 15,000, I believe he said 15,000 meals over this time. So he's been working with kids for a long time and seems to do a good job of it.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
I just had actually two questions.
Okay.
One is, how long has this issue been going on there at the library? And what kind of data are you collecting about it so that you could have some baseline data to determine how things are changing or whether or not they are changing?
Thank you. This year is so different because we don't know what's going to happen, once school starts again. We've got limits of the number of people who can be in the library, so that automatically limits the number of students. We've got data, well, since I've been here at Pike, we've got data going back several years. This problem has gone on since the freshman center was built. So it's been probably a good 20 years or so or more. The last 2 years we had off-duty police officers as our security, and that did lessen tremendously the number of incidences we had where police were involved. Usually what would happen is if a student acted up, got too loud or too rambunctious or whatever, we would ask them to, monitor their behavior, change it. And the police were not involved unless the student refused to monitor their behavior and then refused to leave when we asked them to leave. That's the only time the police actually got involved, but that was happening a lot. So with the off-duty police officers, those incidents went down quite a bit. I think, if I remember correctly, the semester before the officers came, we had something like 17 or 18 incident reports where we had to deal with students and the police. After the officer was there, if we compared the same semester, which would have been a couple in, we had maybe 2. So it really did change, but that still doesn't engage the students. And so we're trying something a little different where we're giving them a reason to be in the library, hopefully, and so that we get maybe a reputation among the students that, I'm going over to the library because I'm going to a meeting of the teen group, or I'm going for this project or this program, rather than what I've heard some kids have been saying, I'm going to go over to the library and hang out. So
it will be very useful to collect some baseline data, meaning not just the number, but actually voices from the young people now and after he comes on board. That way you can also get their voices in this mix of data. It's always so powerful to hear the young people talk about what their experiences are, the why, and how things may be changing too.
Okay, yes, that's a good point. I'll
That
keep that
would
in
be,
mind.
and we had asked last year for John, it was John Helling, did some disaggregated data on this because we wanted to know exactly who was getting in trouble, when, and so forth. So I know we've got that data, but Carla, your idea is even better.
Well,
That's
that
great.
sounds like a step in the right direction.
Yes.
So,
I hope so.
do we have any
Good
any
news.
additional questions or comments from Ms. Ayers as far as Pike Branch? It's a lovely facility. I've been there, so
Thank you.
you should be very proud of yourself.
We like it.
Well, thank you again for your report.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to the public comment and communication part of the agenda tonight. In lieu of the extreme emergency facing our city and in keeping with the executive order issued by the governor, the public will not be invited to physically attend this meeting, but has the ability to view and listen to the regular meeting via a live stream on YouTube, on the YouTube link that we have available on the public library website at the start of the meeting. But we do have the capability at our Learning Center for the public to make comments, and this is the part of the program or of the agenda where we leave room for anybody who's in the public who wants to make a comment. And I do believe we have one person who does want to comment tonight, and we ask that that they limit their comments to 5 minutes. Jackie, who do we have out there to help us with this?
Joe Backey is at the Library Services Center and he is managing the public computer. So Joe, can you put our one speaker on?
I've unmuted it. Oh.
There he is.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Torres. I am a 23-year veteran of the library and president of our union, ASME Local 3395, representing frontline and support staff of IndyPL. Over 200 plus members fall under our responsibility of representation. I'm here tonight to share feedback and options from a survey the union sent to its members at Central Library concerning ongoing weddings. This morning, the Indiana Department of Health reported 618 new coronavirus cases, almost 86,000 positive cases, and 3,000 deaths. Every wedding setup is a reminder of the daily sacrifices that staff are making to avoid friends and family. One member has not seen their 80-year-old mother since we reopened because they cannot justify potentially exposing her to the virus. Another one is out and without pay because her husband is a high risk. These are just two examples of the daily sacrifices some staff are making, along with the constant cursing we encounter after asking patrons to pull up their mask. Is not always a pleasant place to be. I imagine this happens at all branches. The weddings take it to another level. What staff were asked, what is your stress level when weddings happen? 8% said they were extremely low, 87% said they were high, moderately high, and extremely high. When asked, staff were asked to rate the level of concern they felt leadership had on our health and safety. 2% felt it was extremely high, 47% felt it was low. When asked if they were fearful coming to work the following day of a wedding, 70% said yes and 30% said no. When asked if weddings should continue, 91% said no. The final question on the survey is an open-ended question offering options for staffing schedules before, during, and after a wedding. One option was to close Central Library the day of and the day after the wedding. Another would like for the library to be totally transparent about how much money is being made by hosting these unsafe events. In the event that a confirmed case of COVID is linked to a large event hosted at Central, we can know how much the library decided its staff and patrons' health and safety is worth. Lastly, how does having weddings fit into the library's mission, especially during a pandemic? At last month's board meeting, CEO Nidis said all large events were canceled, other than that wedding Saturday night. You can imagine how relieved the staff at Central were learning the weddings were done, but that is not what is happening. We have had 4 weddings since the last board meeting, 2, possibly 3 are scheduled for September, and 5 remaining according to the 2020 schedule. Every time CEO Nidis is asked about them, she says Dr. Kane was consultant and approved the weddings, which you all heard last month. Now for the ask. We would like the board to create a policy about hosting events during medical emergencies, such as this pandemic. We can't stay silent when we are making sacrifices, or as a member put it, why the good times of a privileged few should take preference over the health and safety of staff, patrons, and their families. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Torres. Do we have anyone else, Joe, that would like to make a comment there?
No, we do not have anyone else here.
Okay. All right.
Is it appropriate for us to make responses at this time?
It's appropriate, and the floor is all yours, guys.
From what I heard, there's a request for a policy to
Right.
be taken up at this time. And it sounds like this is something that the board should take very seriously. If our staff are telling us that they don't feel safe by the large percentage number, we need to think very carefully about this.
I agree.
I also agree, and I went to Central Library on Saturday in the afternoon and saw this wedding set up. And I found it a little bit alarming. And so I would like to know, what is the revenue, or, what is the, what are our practices regarding this wedding, especially now, because I also was under the impression that there weren't going to be any more. And the setup that I looked at seemed like there was going to be at least 100 or so people there. And so I was concerned about it. So I would like to know, what are we going to do about that going forward?
Well, I got to admit, I'm torn on this one, because I am not not a big fan of large gatherings, but it is allowed. There is an exception carved out for weddings, and we are abiding by the rules set up or the guidelines set up by Dr. Kane. It's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Jackie, that we only have 2 employees that are at the wedding throughout the duration and have limited interaction with the wedding itself. And that's on a not volunteer basis, but no one is forced to be there if they don't want to be. They get paid extra to be there, or they get paid to be there, of course. We are legally obligated under the contracts that we have with these wedding or
You don't have
events.
to sign a
Events.
contract.
Yes, I'm sorry, Dr. Payne.
I forgot. I said you don't have to sign the contracts.
These contracts were already signed.
Oh, you
okay?
mean
Now
long time
whether
ago.
whether if the issue is do we sign any more going forward, I understand that, but these were already in place. At least that's my understanding, and we've talked to our legal representative, and we don't have an out. Okay,
Judge, did you say there were only 2 employees
Jackie,
for every wedding?
that's my understanding, right, Jackie?
There are 2 employees from the events department who are there on site when a wedding is getting set up and started. Once the wedding is underway, the event is turned over to the management of the caterers, and our own staff pretty much spends the evening in their offices on call. There's a lot of things about the information that you just received that I would appreciate the opportunity to respond to in a more organized fashion, since I didn't know about this survey, nor have I seen the results of this survey. There's also been a little bit of disinformation. I did follow up with all of you subsequent to the change in Dr. Kane's policy and report about the subsequent weddings that were happening. So this business of saying that I said there wasn't going to be any more weddings does not reflect the later information that you all received. So if you could refer this matter to me, I'd be very happy to prepare some kind of written response to it.
Okay. And okay, any more comments by the board? I think that's prudent.
But my point was not about that. My point was about the notion of a policy. I would really think that out of concerns, just as Jackie and all of the board members are concerned about our colleagues and the public, going forward, I think that we need to take seriously this recommendation about a policy, because anytime we say, okay, now we're locked into another contract, there should be a policy that helps us to think through and be much more responsive rather than, all right, well, it's already signed. I think Jackie is on point. Maybe there are some things that we need to think about. At the same time, as a board, we have the responsibility of forwarding policies that can really make a difference for both our public and for the staff within the library system. So I'd like for us to take seriously that recommendation.
No, I agree. My only comment with respect to the contract being signed, that's the reality that we have no legal means to get out of the contract. I fully agree, because a lot of entities are having to look at this. Who expected this to come into place back in February? Nobody. Right. We had other stuff going on in the world, or in our world here in Indianapolis. So I fully understand, and I'm on board with looking at this, because this is something that even in my field, in the criminal justice field, that we have to now look at and address. So, and I go to work, as well. So I understand the concerns raised by the public comments. I agree that we need to look and have a policy in place in going forward with all the events, not just weddings, all the events, because a lot of our events don't just draw 10 people, they draw a large gathering. So I agree that we need to, but it isn't something that, we should have foreseen at the start of the year.
Right.
Nobody foresaw this. No one.
Is this the case, Russell? Because I believe the previous to the conversation was that the library attempted to find other venues for these weddings. And so what happened? We just couldn't find other locations? Because, I would imagine a lot of venues actually did perhaps cancel. And then we seem to be the best bargain or best game in town. So are these contracts that were in place, what, a year ago that we have to actually meet?
Yes. Yes, Dr. Jett, these are contracts that have been signed a year ago, and in some cases even longer ago than that. In one or two cases, they're contracts that were rescheduled from the spring when there was a no travel permission available, and they were rescheduled until later when in fact the travel ban was lifted. The comment that was made about looking to see if we could move them to someplace else was when we thought that there was going to be a prohibition on any events over 50 people. But when Dr. Kane did the carve out for weddings, then we no longer had the legal justification to cancel our contracts and ask the caterer to take them to some facility, for example, in Hamilton County that didn't have that kind of a limitation. Once the carve out was made for weddings, then our ability to cancel our contracts was impacted.
And Jackie, we have not, to answer Dr. Jett's concerns, we have not taken anyone else's weddings. Like a venue said, we're not doing it, you can do it at the public library. We haven't taken on anything new, right?
I have to believe, and I haven't looked at the postings in the last few weeks, but I'm sure that there have been some people who have planned a wedding for 2 years from now on the hope that COVID's
No, but like, no, my question was like someone that was having a wedding in July in town and their facility closed down, and then they
No,
said,
we're
let's
not
move.
taking it. No, nothing like that. And there are a dozen venues across the city who are all facing the same situations, and we confer with them to try to make sure that we're all looking for the best practices that we can have for this to happen.
But I agree, this is definitely a future agenda item. We need to make sure that we have a course of action in place in any future contracts or operations of the library.
We should probably be clear on what sort of revenue that we're getting. And then the difference is we're a public institution, which is probably different than a lot of private entities.
Curtis?
Yeah, I have a quick question. If we can get a copy of the sampling, if Mr. Torres doesn't mind giving that to us so we can review that or make that part of the minutes or notes for tonight's meeting, I would like to look at those a little bit further.
I will send it.
Thank you.
That's a good point, Curtis. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Torres. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I second that. Mr. Torres, thank you very much for putting that survey together. To take a look at it in its total, and Dr. Murtada, thank you very much. I think we can definitely look at something. With regard to Dr. Jett, you said you went to the library and you saw a wedding set up. What particularly was your concern, and did you measure like the distance between the tables, or what did you see that made you?
I have pictures that I took that I'm happy to show you. And I went when the wedding. The tables were set up. It was more of a pre-setup. There were 6 to each table. I didn't think that was proper distancing. I didn't get a tape measure out. I just looked at it. I'm happy to share the pictures with you. You can see it for yourself. I also looked at the head table. That looked like there would be about 12, 15 or so people across. It didn't look like there was proper spacing between those. I don't know if they were all related. And so, yeah, that's sort of had me at some alarm. And I did talk to some of the library staff that actually was a little bit concerned. So happy to share those with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? But definitely future agenda item for sure, because we need to be prepared. All right. If there's no other public comments, we move on to item 5, approval of the minutes of the executive session, regular and special meeting. This is the meeting we held on July 27th. Is there a motion to approve the meetings of the regular meeting held July 27th of this year?
A motion that we approve.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the matter? Seeing none, Angie, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. And Mr. Biederman,
Approve.
Mr. Bixby,
Approve.
Dr. Jett,
Approve.
Dr. Murtada,
Approved.
Ms. Payne. Ms. Payne,
Did we lose her?
Sorry, I was on. Approved.
thank you, Pat. Reverend Robinson,
Approve.
and Judge Salinas.
Approved.
Thank you very much.
Now we have approved the minutes. Move on to the the committee reports. We start out with the finance committee. Dr. Payne.
EJ, are you there?
Yes, I am.
I'm so happy.
Good evening, everyone.
Good
evening.
I will share my screen and I'll be very brief because I know we have quite a bit to get through. Okay, so in your packet, you have our treasurer's report for through the month of July, I'm sorry. And I'm going to go over our operating fund, just a summary of our operating fund. And I'm going to compare it to 2019 just for some reference. We overall, our results look as expected, considering the COVID-19 impact. So on the revenue side, we see that we have received 52% of our revenues to date. At this time last year, we had received 56% of our revenue. So obviously we've received less, but we expected it due to the delays in the penalty due dates for the property taxes. So we're hoping that we can make up that revenue in the second half of 2020. So we'll be looking at that and seeing how we come out there. On the expenditure side, though, we also have seen a reduction here as expected because of the shutdown. So for instance, we have 46% of our revised budget spent so far. At this time last year, we had spent 52%. So that's significantly less than what we had spent by this time last year. And I just want to highlight a few reasons why. Utilities, we have $16,000 less than last year in utilities so far this year. Our hourly salary budget, which is where we pay our subs from, which we pay our summer reading clerks from, because we've cut down on those two, or we didn't have any summer reading clerks this year. We have spent $348,000 less this year than last year in that line item. Then conferences, we've spent $36,000 less in conferences. In printing, we've spent $67,000 less. So there are other lines like that, but some of them we may make up later in the year. For instance, snow removal, we've spent $178,000 less this year than last year. But as we get into the winter, depending on what it does, we might come out even there. But these ongoing items, such as utilities, we do expect that these savings will stay. So that is all I have on the treasurer's report. If anyone has any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
No question.
All right, if no questions, I would ask that you approve this for submission for audit.
Okay.
Is there a motion from the board to approve the treasurer's report?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second? I heard a 1 and 2, so I'll take that as a motion and a second, if that's okay with the board.
Fine.
All right, Angie, can we have a reading of the roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Peterman,
Approved.
Mr. Bigsby,
Approved.
Dr. Jett,
Approve.
Dr. Murtada,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approve.
and Judge Salinas.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carried.
All right, thank you. Our next item is Resolution 30, 2020, and that is a resolution to adopt the appropriations, tax levy, and tax rates for our 2021 budget. And as we talked about at the public hearing, which we held on August 11th, we have 4 funds that we have to get approved we have to get our appropriations approved annually, which is the operating fund, our 2 debt service funds, our rainy day fund, and our library improvement reserve fund. We don't have any budget for the library improvement reserve fund this time. So we've got our operating, debt service, and rainy day funds. We did advertise, so we have to advertise the public hearing, and we did advertise that July 31st and August 7th in the Indianapolis Star and the Court and Commercial. So I wanted to note that. Other than that, I have nothing to add to this. I would ask that you approve these appropriations for these funds, the tax levies, and the tax rate.
DJ, is this going to go before the council as well?
It will. Once you guys approve, we will submit it to the council, and then we have a presentation to the Municipal Corporations Committee on September 24th. So please feel free to attend. I will send you information on that. And then we go to council. I can't remember the date now. It gets finally adopted October 12th. So it will go to council, but you guys have to adopt it officially before it goes to council.
I may ask quickly, do you see any red flags, any concerns they may have?
No, I do not see any concerns that they may have. The one thing they might ask about, but they usually don't, they expect this, is that our revenues are less than our the budget that we're asking for. But we do have the fund balance to cover it, and we always budget high and estimate our revenues a little lower. We're just conservative in our budgeting.
Before we get to further discussions, is there a motion to approve Resolution 30-2020?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second. Do we have any further questions or comments or discussion on this resolution before the board takes a vote? Hearing and seeing none, I would ask Angie to take a roll call, please, on the vote.
Mr. Biederman,
Approved.
Mr. Bigsby,
Approved.
Dr. Jett,
Approve.
Dr. Mercado,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
and Judge Salinas.
Approved.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Our next item is Resolution 31-2020, and that goes along with the previous resolution. This is just a resolution stating that we do not intend to exceed a combined debt service tax rate of 0.0318 per $100 of assessed value. This is the rate that we promised the council when we went for approval for all of our new buildings and renovations back in 2014. And we've been able to stay within that tax rate, and we expect to stay there this year or for 2021. So this just gives them comfort that we will stay there. And we can achieve that by structuring our debt service for our upcoming bond issue appropriately so that we hit that as close as possible without exceeding that 0.0318. It also helps the DLGF to work our budget so that we're as close to that rate as possible. The resolution helps them, that is.
And for our public, DLGF will stand for?
I'm sorry, Department of Local Government Finance.
Thank you. For our public that's watching us on YouTube.
Yes, and they do the final review of our budget. Once the council approves, the DLGF reviews it to make sure that we've abided by all the legal requirements.
Before we get to a discussion on Resolution 31-2020, is there a motion from the board to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We will now move to the discussion on Resolution 31-2020. Is there any questions or discussion on this resolution? Hearing and seeing none, I would ask Angie to take a roll call, please.
Mr. Biederman,
Approved.
Mr. Bigsby,
Approved.
Dr. Jett,
Approve.
Dr. Mercado,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
and Judge Salinas.
Approved.
Thank you.
EJ, I think you're still up, right?
Yes, I am. We have one more item, and John Helling, our Director of Public Services, is going to cover that resolution.
Okay, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So we are continuing the conversation on the topic of the resolution of the per day late fines. What you have before you is a formal resolution that just kind of affirms that this is the direction that you want us to take. We've also included a rough timeline document that shows you kind of the steps that would get us to a permanent fine-free policy. We are still operating under the pandemic resolution, for lack of a better term, that the board passed that temporarily suspended per day late fines for the duration of the governor's phased reopening, which we're still obviously in. So this would, for the patrons' point of view, basically continue that to the end of the year when we could pass a permanent adjustment to the per day late fines. In the timeline document, you can see the black text is library board activity, and the red text is some of our library staff activity, which involves, departments like IT and communications and what we would do to make patrons aware and that kind of a thing. So the broad strokes of the plan are the same that you heard last month. And I know I offered you a lot of detail last month, so I'm going to refrain from doing so this month. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have before you take a vote.
Well, I had a few questions. I know that I spoke with you, John, about some of the issues concerning the elimination of the fees. I guess I'm still, kind of torn on eliminating fees that bring in almost $500,000 to the library for right now. And we're in a pandemic. And we're not giving, employees that big of a raise or anything like that. And I know it does impact some of the, most impoverished communities of our, the county. But I was just kind of torn on that. I know that you answered a lot of my questions when I called last time, but, it's just me, in my opinion, that I think that we should hold off for right now until we get a little bit more how the numbers are going to shake for next year, since we're going to have to pay a lot more and people who don't return material, or if there's a way that we can, put some type of, policy or something in place so that we can't collect more without losing, $500,000. That was my only concern.
Yeah, and it's a very valid concern. And I would say we have talked about ways that we can increase the percentage of fees that we collect on lost and damaged items. I don't know that we're ready to talk about that just yet. We're still kind of discussing that, but that's something that we need to do. I would also just reiterate that the amount of per day late fines that we're collecting is decreasing every year. So this is not necessarily a revenue stream that we can really rely on for the long-term future. I also know that EJ kind of figured into her 2021 budget the assumption that we would see $0 in per day late fines. And EJ, you can correct me if I'm stating that incorrectly.
No, that is correct.
Okay.
And that's strictly due to the governor's order. Is that the reason why there's $0 projection for that?
That's correct. And also we have been talking about going in this direction for a couple of years now, actually. And we were in the process of moving that way anyway.
And it was an anticipation. It was a more conservative approach to estimating our revenues in anticipation that the board might pass this elimination of fines.
Okay, thank you.
So my question, and I understand Curtis' concern as far as being able to pay our staff appropriately and make sure that there's money in there for raises. And I remember us talking about it last year. This was the direction we were going in. Do we characterize this as a matter that we were looking at anyway, and is this going to be looked at as a response to the pandemic? Because as you said, we were looking at this anyway, at least from my memory from last year.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I would personally characterize it as something we were looking at anyway as a general direction, and the pandemic just kind of precipitated it because a lot of people were experienced a reduction in their own income. And so we were looking to eliminate any barrier that we could possibly find that would keep people from using the library.
Additional comments or questions? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve resolution 32, 2020?
So moved.
Second, is there a second?
Second.
Angie, any further discussion on this resolution from the board members? Hearing and seeing none. Angie, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Biederman,
Approved.
Mr. Bigsby,
Approved.
Dr. Jett,
Approve.
Dr. Murtada,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas.
Approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
We move on to item 7, the Diversity Policy and Human Resource Committee. Reverend Robinson, you're the chair.
Yes, thank you so much, Judge Salinas. I believe Catherine is on the line with us, and I'm going to turn it over to our HR director, Catherine, to give leadership at this time.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Evening.
Good evening.
We are bringing to you two resolutions, board action requests for a couple of policy changes. The first one is board action request 7A, and that is for approval of resolution 33-2020. It's a leave donation program for major disasters. And what this is would be an additional policy. Right now, if you recall, we have a policy, a leave donation policy that is for medical emergencies, specifically for folks who maybe have run out of FMLA or have a need for an income supplement when they have run out of any other PTO or accrued hours that they may have. Also for this one happens to be about the pandemic and as a result of the pandemic. The leave donation program that we have already, that policy cannot be applied to a pandemic, which is considered a major disaster. So in looking at how we could support employees who may have run out of any other accrued time or paid time through the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, or the FFCRA, we wanted to have a way to support employees who find themselves in that position. And as a result of that, this new policy would be available. It's a leave donation program. Employees could donate leave, but in order to be compliant with the IRS regulations regarding this type of program, it has to be a separate leave bank. It cannot be hours that have already been donated into our current leave bank. This would be a new, in essence, a new bucket. And so employees who may wish to apply for this leave, we would send out a notice to employees to say, we have a request, we need hours, and they could donate, but they must specify that those hours are donated into this particular pool. And this pool can only be used for a major disaster that has been declared by the President of the United States. So there are some very specific IRS regulations. The way we have this set up is the same as our regular leave donation program, so that the recipient of ours is responsible for paying the taxes, not the donor. And so we wanted to, as part of our ongoing support of employees during this pandemic, this is just one other option that we'd like to put in place. And it could be that once we have this in policy, if there's another national disaster that's declared that would impact staff in the same or similar way as this pandemic, it could be utilized for that. Any questions?
I have a question real quick. So
Sure.
if an employee is requesting some of this leave, do they just go to HR, or is there an internal panel that makes that decision? And who all,
Sure.
I know a lot of questions grouped into one, but who all donates to that bank in particular?
Okay. To start with, if someone is going to donate to this particular bank, they would have to fill out a form that we have that would say and designate their donation into this particular leave bank. And then depending on the number of people who would apply for donated leave, we would have to kind of divvy it up in a fair way. We don't know that we can say to someone, yes, for all the time that you may want, we may not have enough donated time to use. So we would have to look at how do we best divide it so that it is divided in a fair and equitable way.
I would have one recommendation so that it kind of is open for maybe some representation, not only by the union or whoever, where they can look at ways and, how that is divvied up. So somebody can say, well, I got 20 hours, I got 30 hours, at least it's amongst their peers who are looking at that. I know at the police department, that's what we do. We donate to a bank. We have one, representation from like the city or the CEO, then you have HR, then you also have a member of the staff on that board as well. But that's just a thought, when you're looking at multiple people asking for donated time, or, one might be more, might have more of an emergency than someone else, it might not be similarly situated. So.
Right, and we can look at that, but my only concern would be because a lot of this has to do with health, and that is considered as part of protected health information, and it is confidential. That would be a concern, and so we can look at that as far as who is eligible to see that information and those requests.
Right.
This would run through the end of the year, correct?
This would be a permanent policy.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
This addition would be the second one that I'm asking for is a temporary.
I knew one of them was. I'm sorry.
I really like Curtis's point. I think we need to have some ways, and I understand HIPAA, I understand the confidentiality there, but without some sense of some other eyes on at least how the bank is being structured and what we're doing, I'd like to make sure that legal counsel helps us to think about what we can do for that. Russell, I see you here. I'm sure that you and Catherine have talked, but Curtis's point is very important. How we go about this process and the kinds of ways that we appoint and have other eyes on what we're doing is just, it's critical. We're about a community organization and we're supporting the community engagement.
Our office has worked with Catherine on this. Mike Maxwell in our office has worked very closely through this, and we can absolutely have that discussion. And one other point that I think, Judge, goes to your question, when this national emergency expires, any unused time that exists in the bank would go back on a pro rata basis to those people who contributed. So this doesn't sit around and doesn't accrue forever and sit around forever. When the emergency ends, it goes back to those who contributed.
Is that language in it? I didn't recall that language being in there.
Yeah, it is.
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll be willing to share what we do at the police department. I mean, we're a municipal government, just like, we're governed by some of the same requirements as the library, but I have no problem in sharing that because we do have representation from actually the peers within the department. But there again, not everybody are members of the union as well who are, who are going to have a say over that. But I just wanted to throw that out there as a suggestion.
Sure, I appreciate it. Thank you.
I hadn't thought about that, Curtis, because we don't have that policy with the court. So I didn't know such a thing existed, to be honest with you. Any additional comments or questions from the board?
Dr. Murtada, that's the last bullet under 289.1, the going back, that's the specific provision.
Thank you, Russell. Appreciate that.
I did have a question. So how is this different from the other medical? It's still medical,
No, this one is for national disasters, and our other leave donation policy has to do with leave that is available for someone who has a medical condition that would be a serious medical condition as defined by the FMLA.
So who would access this one under the disasters? Like what would be the reason that someone would access this leave?
Say someone who has to stay home because of childcare needs, and they have, say they used up part of the FFCRA that is called the expanded FMLA over the summer because they did not have childcare and they needed to be home. And so now that school's starting, and say their school is going to be virtual, and so they need some additional help because they run out of either PTO or other accrued time, or they have run out of the expanded FMLA, which is a paid leave. And so they may have some financial constraints that they would request donated leave in order to be home with their kids.
You know, I was thinking along that exact line, and I think sometimes women get penalized if we don't have other women looking at particular policies and procedures. It's true. We're now in a time.
Yeah, because
So-
I was thinking about this even earlier this spring when the Families First Act first came out, and you know, I was thinking about the impacts to our staff, and I thought, okay, you know, as a mom, you know, if kids are not able to be in some kind of daycare or some kind of situation during the summertime, this is a great program. But you know, we're all hopeful that this will be that this pandemic will be close to ending, or we'd have some good news by the end of the summer regarding school. And then I thought, well, okay, let's think about this and what might we do as a library that could help our employees. And that's really the goal, is to provide another method of helping our employees.
And that's not to say that men aren't impacted by it too. I want to
That's
be very
correct.
clear to my male colleagues. Very clear about that.
That is correct.
I mean, there's also people that don't have children. So I'm wondering what the other access point would be, like someone taking care of, you know, other family members or parents, or, you know,
Elders.
what are right. So what are the complete access points of this? So medical leave would not be it. There would not be access for that. Okay, so that's kind of what separates it from the others. It wouldn't be you have a medical. Okay. So in that case, there is no violation of like HIPAA.
Well,
because we're not accessing it.
In this particular case. Yes, that is true.
But then, so we have, if you're not able to access this particular policy as a result of a medical issue, you can only access the other one. Then with this one, there is no violation of HIPAA. Unless you can't access it based on medical, and I'm missing something.
No, this is not, when we're talking about childcare, this is not a medical determination. That's correct.
Or any other issue that would allow you to access this particular fund?
Not necessarily, because someone who, say, is under the provisions of the governor's executive order, okay, so they are either high risk or 65 or older, and right now they are able, according to the library, to stay home. That is because of a medical reason, and so then yes, that would have to do with their own protected health information. So that could potentially be a person who would apply for this, but that is related to their own medical health information.
Dr. Jett, the language indicates that the individual has to be adversely affected by a major disaster. So it's very broad in the application. And so you have both extremes, the one Catherine just gave, where it could be a medical issue, and you have another that could be a child care issue, or a parent taking care of a parent, an elderly parent. Those are all adverse effects. And so I think that's part of the challenge potentially of the HIPAA concerns. It could be a health related, but it's not that I'm too sick to come to work, but I have an potential adverse impact because of a natural disaster that would prevent me from being able to access work.
And this policy is only in place when there is actually a declared medical emergency by the President of the United States.
No,
Natural
Disaster.
disaster.
Yeah, major disaster.
Major disaster. And then when it's over,
it's over.
the policy is not in effect.
It's almost goes inactive. Mhm.
Additional questions or comments by the board? Is there a motion to approve Resolution 33, 2020?
So moved.
I heard two voices. I'll take one as a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? My only comment is I think it's being proactive by the library, and I do appreciate that. Any other comments or discussions by the board? Hearing and seeing none. Angie, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Biederman,
Approved.
Mr. Bigsby,
Approved.
Dr. Jett,
Approved.
Dr. Murtada,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carries. We go on to Resolution 34, 2020.
Thank you. This resolution contains language for our current personal leave of absence policy. And this is a temporary amendment that we would like to add to this. And this really is focused on people who have childcare issues. Our personal leave of absence right now is a maximum 90-day period of time that is decided on a case-by-case basis for some type of an emergency where we allow an employee to be off work. We are holding their job for them for this period of time. This is outside of FMLA because this could be for employees who are not eligible for that. What we have done in times is sometimes this has been utilized when an individual has a health condition and again, may not be eligible for FMLA. But what we're asking for, if you look down, is an amendment to this. That is a temporary amendment. Right now, we're asking it to be in place through December 31st of this year, which is set up for individuals who need to be home because of childcare due to their children not attending school in person, but virtually. And this would be in full day increments. It could be taken as a consecutive days off, or it could be taken intermittently and used that way. We're setting it up so that individuals would request it. There would again be a maximum 90 days, but it would be requested in 4-week increments or 160-hour increments. And the reason for this is that we are tying this to whether or not it is an operational hardship to the library for an individual to be off longer than the 12 weeks that the expanded FMLA of the FFCRA allows. So if we find that at the end of the year that this pandemic has not subsided, or that there's additional issues that have come up where there's a need, I would bring this back for an extension. But right now, since we don't know what the pandemic is going to do and we don't know what schools will be doing, we thought it was wise to limit this right now to the end of the year. The one other difference between this amendment and our personal leave of absence policy is that in our regular personal leave policy, an employee, it is unpaid time, and the employee is responsible to pay their full benefits cost. With this amendment, what we're asking for is that the employee only still pays their employee share of benefits, and the library picks up the employer share. So that would be the one big difference. Any questions?
just a quick one. It seems like it was focused on childcare and I think it was Dr. Jett's perspective that was about the other kinds of care. This is specific to childcare. And am I catching that language correctly?
That is correct. That is correct.
What about the other aspect? Why is this one needed at this point for only childcare?
Because of folks who may be out of any time, they may have used up, this is about time. So they may have already used up the expanded FMLA. And so they've used up their PTO or any accrued time. And so now they've got a child who's got to be home and attending virtual school, and they have no other childcare providers. So they actually need time to be home, but they've run out of any available time that they can use. And so what this does is it's a safety net for those parents of children who have to be at home, and they need to be there in order to supervise or parents.
Yes, I understood that part. I was I'm right there with that.
Safety net in that case.
But I'm thinking about the safety net for those who are taking care of elders or taking care of. How have we addressed that safety net of someone who has other responsibilities, like what we've talked about before, the elders, the ones who are sick, taken care of?
When this is about individual impact. It is really not related so much to the care of an elder. This is when there's two parts to FFCRA. The first part, the emergency paid sick leave, is 2 weeks of paid leave, and it is for specific reasons, such as caring for someone who has had an impact from COVID, okay? So they've been exposed, they have COVID, they've been diagnosed, they are symptomatic. And so that allows for 2 weeks of paid leave. And then what the library has said is that if that employee is impacted themselves, if they are subject to the governor's order, then the library is saying, we're not going to require you to come back to work. We're going to allow you to continue to stay home, and you can use any accrued leave that you have. They can also apply for donated leave because of the declaration of a major disaster. But it is not about caring for someone else. If that's the case, they may, depending on who that family member is, they may be eligible for what I will call normal, regular FMLA. Okay, so there's a lot of different pieces and parts that are playing or that can impact this. But these two policies are more about our specific employee, in particular, regarding the childcare aspect.
Okay. So this doesn't deal with compromise. If a person has a compromised health condition and has run out of time.
If this
days.
Sure.
I know that this one only deals with childcare, right?
Right. If a person is subject, if you're talking about compromise, meaning a health condition.
Yes.
If they are subject to the governor's executive order, which defines it as high risk health condition that could be seriously impacted by COVID, or they are age 65 or older, then they fall under, that order falls under the FFCRA. And so we're saying, yes, if you fall under that provision, you can still remain home, but that time beyond those first 2 weeks that are paid, because they fall under that emergency paid sick leave, what part of the FFCRA, which lasts 2 weeks. But if you're still under the governor's order, then you can still stay home, but you have to use your own accrued time. And now with the leave donation for major disasters, they can apply for donated leave so that they can have paid time. But again, it depends on how much paid leave or leave is donated into the pool.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
How many
Yeah.
employees are we talking about that actually need to have this specific child care protection? Because that is rather limiting.
Limited.
And we are focusing on equity.
We have right now, we did a survey and we have a little over 90 employees who have children in school who potentially could be impacted. We don't know, whether they have other support systems in place. I don't know if their school is, in person or 100% virtual or a mixture. So that would be the greatest impact, is if all 90 said we need some type of additional leave. I don't think so, because there's a spread of the age groups of the kids. And again, we don't know their own personal situation. But we wanted to have something in place so that if people did need some additional help, that it could be available.
The explanation is helpful. Thank you. What I was trying to do is to understand, okay, we've got this piece pulled out for childcare.
Right.
And I understand that. So under FSCRA, we're talking about approximately 90 employees who may in fact be impacted. What I was trying to understand was, okay, how do we look out for some of the other issues? And you said you have to use your own accrued time for other situations. And so I was trying to see, where do we take care of some of the other situations, not just the child care?
Sure. Dr. Murtada, I don't know that we can take care of every situation.
No, of course not.
It would be nice, but the people that have the greatest impact from this, I think right now, are folks who, when it comes to the leave donation program for this major disaster.
I don't believe that we have to take care of everybody. That's not where I'm coming from.
Sure.
What I am trying to think about is, how do we craft the language necessary so that there is opportunity for those who do have that and need that support. So I was trying to be equitable in the kinds of support that we can give.
Sure. And
I'm not naive there.
well, I didn't think you were.
Well, this one only addressed childcare, those with childcare needs, correct?
The addition, the amendment to the personal leave policy is for childcare purposes,
Okay.
and that is through the end of this year. The other is through the FFCRA. It is a way that we can try and help people who have reached a point where they have no other income coming in and may need some additional help. And it's one way for us to offer some support. I'm not going to go ahead and say we can offer full support, because that is not true. But it is something that we're trying to do to help.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions? Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
So move.
There's a second.
Second.
Any further discussion on resolution 34, 2020? Hearing and seeing none. Angie, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Biederman. Mr. Bigsby.
Approved.
Dr. Jett.
Abstain.
Dr. Matada.
Abstain. I'd like to have some more discussion to follow this. I was just looking at my notes. I'm sorry, you don't need more of that discussion right this second, but I'm writing down, trying to think through this.
And Dr. Murtada, I'd like to offer that if there's additional questions or conversation, I am more than happy to talk with you offline.
Thanks, Catherine. I appreciate that very much.
Ms. Payne.
Approve.
Reverend Robinson.
Approved.
And Judge Salinas.
Approved. Motion carries. We'll move on to, that's all we have for the Diversity Committee. We'll move on to number 8, Facilities Committee. Dr. Jett, you're the chair.
Okay, Sharon, we have 3 resolutions that she will present. and some updates.
Sharon, you're on mute.
Okay, I'll get used to it one of these days. Hello, good to see everybody. And we have our first item, 8A, Resolution 35-2020, authorization to issue an offer and request for bids for sale of real estate. This is our old Eagle Branch Library at 3325 Lowry Road. We have prepared in this request for your approval a copy of the offer and request for bids for sale, the actual bid packet that would be going out. You should have received a revised version of this. I just wanted to highlight those revisions. There are 3 that help clarify the offering package, and they are highlighted in yellow, and there is one that is just deleted. So the first one is on the page notice of sale of real estate. It's simply adding a point of delivery for that offering packet to anybody interested in purchasing the property. We will be offering that packet online, so they don't have to go through me or come into the building to pick up one, although they are more than welcome to do either of those. Makes it a little more available. The second one is the instructions to bidders. We have added the Indianapolis Business Journal, the Indianapolis Star, and the Indianapolis Recorder. We will not be advertising in the Court and Commercial Record. So that's the second item. And then we removed one sentence that clarifies and is consistent with language elsewhere in the document that allows for the opening and the reading of all offers in that November Facilities Committee meeting. And we will have a date for that as soon as we can coordinate schedules. This did pass out of committee. We are asking for the minimum bids to be $400,000. And yeah, we will be considering all offers. So like I say, it did pass out of committee. If you have questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Questions from the board? Hearing and seeing none, is there a motion to approve Resolution 35-2020?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on this matter? Hearing and seeing none. Angie, can we have a roll call, please, on this motion?
Mr. Biederman,
Approved.
Mr. Bigsby,
Approved.
Dr. Jett,
Approve.
Dr. Murtada,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
and Judge Salinas.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carries. We'll move on to Resolution 36-2020.
Thank you. This is item 8B, and it is in response actually to our strategic plan of the 2015 to 2020 strategic plan to maximize accessibility to the library and its services. This is authorization to purchase property located at 3660 East 62nd Street for the Glendale Branch Replacement Project. This, as a lot of you probably know, is the location for the John Strange School that the township will be selling. We are paying $900,000 for approximately 5.7 acres if you approve this. We will be required to file for rezoning and replatting of the property. And this is a agreement that the school has partially signed. They've signed their part of it in their board meeting this month, and now it's to you for your approval. And again, this one did also pass out of the committee.
Any questions of the board? Hearing and seeing none, is there a motion to approve Resolution 36-2020?
I make the motion. I'm excited to see us moving on and out of Glendale.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been motion and seconded. Is there any further discussion on this motion on the board? Hearing and seeing none. Angie, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Biederman,
Approved.
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Jett,
Approve.
Dr. Murtada,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carries. We'll move on to resolution 37, 2020. Sharon?
This is item 8C. It's approval to award an equipment purchase order for the Lawrence Branch Marketplace mobile shelving units. This was a absence of scope for the entire project. So we requested an invitation to quote from the provider of the rest of the shelving. So we would have matching shelving and color in that renovation. And it exceeds the level just by a little bit of what you need to actually approve for it. Ordinarily, this would not be something we would need to bring to you. So we are recommending that. And again, this one also came out of committee.
Any questions on this motion from the board? Hearing and seeing none, is there a motion to approve resolution 37, 2020?
So moved.
Second.
It's been motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Angie, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Biederman,
Approved.
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Jett,
Approved.
Dr. Murtada,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you, Sharon. And you threw me for a second with your background. I actually thought you were in front of that facility, that project.
Yeah, that is our West Perry project. So I wanted to be sure to at least show a little picture of what's happening down there. It does have a roof deck now, so it is undercover a little bit and moving forward very well.
Appreciate
Making an
that.
impact
Thank you.
on that landscape.
Thank you.
Thank
We'll
you.
move on to item number 9, Strategic Planning Committee. Dr. Jett.
We don't
Yeah.
have any items.
Okay, we'll move on to the Library Foundation update. Reverend Robinson.
Great, thank you, Judge Salinas. This month, the Library Foundation received a grant from the Lilly Endowment to expand the library collection of racial equity materials. It will allow the library to purchase 4,000 copies of 180 titles in various formats, including material for 100 schools that participate in the shared system. The grant also includes funding to help publicize the expanded collection. We appreciate the collection management team quick legwork, which enabled us to submit the request in a timely manner. To develop the book list, collection management received valuable feedback and/or resources from Jessica Moore, Nichelle Hayes, Dr. Pat Payne, and Dr. Terry Jett. There were, the foundation also had donors that have supported the foundation, and the foundation would like to thank 1,845 donors who made gifts last month. The following are our top corporate foundation contributors: Barnes and Thornburg, First Merchant Bank, Indiana Education Savings Authority, Indiana Humanities, Indiana University Health, Miller Summers Mission for Children's Fund, Rich Charles, and the Glick Fund. This month, the Library Foundation is proud to provide funding for the following library programs. All programs are system-wide unless otherwise noted. There were children's programs that the Library Foundation supported, such as preschool package programs, Read to Me Please, Teen Advisory Group. There was also cultural programs the Library Foundation supports: adult book discussion, arts for families, branded giveaway, Center for Black Literature and Culture, concert series, youth art series, preschool package programs, teen spaces, and the YA authors visit. The foundation also supports collection and IT programs such as the Book Club in a Bag, lifelong learning, code and tech for adults, branch reopening celebrations are also some of the programs that the Library Foundation supports. And so we thank the Library Foundation for their continued work and efforts in supporting and undergirding the library and its programs. Judge Salinas, that concludes my foundation report.
Okay. Taking into account all the messages that were sent out, does the board have any questions or comments?
Well, that was,
yeah, go ahead, Dr.
we
Dr.
have
Jett.
that, I believe a good portion of that was last month's report.
Some of it was, yes.
All right, we'll move on to item 11, report from the CEO, Dr. Jackie.
Thank you, Judge Salinas. I have two items for you this week. One is Resolution 38-2020. This is our routine resolution for the approval of finances, personnel, and travel. I do want to point out in here the retirements of a number of long-term library employees, and I do want to take this moment to thank them for their lengthy service. Rhonda Scomp was in our cataloging department for 31 years. Norma Black was a page at Eagle for 24 years. Tom Probasco, a librarian at Central for 28 years. Susan Barnum, a public services librarian, finishing up her career down at Southport after 20 years. There are a few others, but those are significant careers dedicated to serving the public library. So I thought it would be valuable to call those to your attention. I would submit this particular proposal 38-2020 for your approval this evening.
Any questions from the board with respect to recommendation or resolution 38-2020?
I just had a question. 31 years, 24 years, 28 years, 20 years. That's an incredible amount of time. What do we do to really say something special for 31, 24, 20, for all these years of service?
Sure. In a different time, Dr. Murtada, we might have done much more in the way of celebratory events that were publicized across the system, and people came together to actually have a cake and celebrate those kinds of things. The Staff Association actually helps to put up a little money when there's a retirement so that there can in fact be a celebration. Unfortunately, we are not having those kinds of events in our system right now. And so in many instances, the effort is a virtual effort, if you will, people writing notes to each other, people collecting kind notes to be shared with the retiree, that type of thing. But we are not able to have the kind of celebrations we once did. It's all the more reason I like to mention them here at the board meeting.
Certainly, certainly.
I don't speak on behalf of the board. I apologize, Dr. Murtada, to cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to say, some way, shape, or form, I'd like to propose that the board do something, send a message, write a letter, something that recognizes 31, 24, 20, these many years of service. There must be something that we can do that honors this number of years of service.
Oh, yeah.
Reading their names out, of course, or reading out the number of years, of course, is a great thing, but it's just so beautiful that they have done this and committed for this long a period of time, collectively over 100 and some odd years easily.
Yes. When we have our staff day, we are able to provide both monetary awards and certificates to employees celebrating different length of service milestones. Mm-hmm. And so these employees would have received something for that fairly recently. But of course, this year, so many of our traditional ways are on the wayside. So we could find a way to send something special from on behalf of the board if you would like.
I would like that
Absolutely.
very much, and I would, if it could, I'd like to, is this time for a motion to say I would like to move that the board send a special commendation to those who have served these numbers of years from the board? Is this the way to do it, Judge Salinas?
I'm
I would
fine
like,
with.
could I just add to your motion that it be, because I just had a huge celebration and it was 2 hours long. So I know we can do something, maybe a planter or something, even more than just a written thing. That's a long time.
It sure is.
Well, as far as the initial recommendation, as far as sending a letter or something, I'm fine with it. As far as something further than that, as long as it's legally able to, we don't want to get into any further discussions on stuff like that. But I'm fine. Listen, I think it's amazing that you served that long in one place. Jackie, if you can look into it, I'll be happy to first offer our thanks from the board, at least from me. And then if there's something, a letter we can all sign or a card we can all sign or something. If there's something more that can be done and it's not against the rules, I'm in favor of it. We should acknowledge that kind of longevity.
Well, Judge, how about if you and I talk about that in the next couple of days and come up with something, okay?
I'm fine with that.
Thank you.
That'd be great.
Is there a motion to, go ahead, it's been motions. Has it been seconded, first and seconded, this motion?
My motion was sounded so raggedy. I don't have it worded adequately.
Well,
want to get it worded so that we say that I would like to see that the board recognize the extensive service of employees that are now retiring and recognize it beyond the mentioning of their names at our board meeting.
Is there a second? Okay. We're not gonna do a roll call. Does anyone oppose the motion? Then it would be accepted by acclamation. Okay. Now, with respect to the resolution of 38-2020, is there a motion to approve that one?
Approved.
Is there a second? Any further discussion on resolution 38-2020? Hearing and seeing none. Angie, can we have a roll call, please? Did we lose Angie? Angie?
It appears we have lost Angie.
All right, well, I'll go down. Mr. Biederman.
Approved.
Mr. Bixby. Ray, you're on mute, I think. Mr. Bixby, oh, not Ray, Curtis, I'm sorry. Mr. Bixby? Did we lose Curtis too?
No, he's still in here.
He's gone now.
Okay, well, we'll come back. Dr. Jett?
Approved.
Dr. Murtada?
Approved.
Dr. Payne?
Approved.
Reverend Robinson?
Approved.
And I and myself, I approve. Let me know, I can't see everybody, so let me know when Curtis is back, if you don't mind.
I saw his phone thing pop up.
Yeah, so did I.
He just got back in and is rejoining right now.
Curtis, can you hear us?
There he is.
Curtis, can you hear us? Can you hear us? You're on mute, Curtis.
Okay, sorry about that. My phone went.
No worries. Your vote on resolution 38-2020, it's 6-0 so far.
Yep.
Approved? Okay. We'll show, we can let Angie know, Jackie, that it was passed by the board, 7-0.
Okay.
Now, Angie, you still got the floor.
The last thing that I have, Judge Salinas, is just a very brief update for you on the status of a couple of COVID-19 related matters. We track the impact of COVID-19 on our employees pretty carefully. And over the course of the last several months, we have had 88 different employees request some sort of paid leave under the CARES Act. And of those, 29 subsequently requested extensions of their original leave allowance. At this time, there are 6 employees who are currently on leave under the provisions of the CARES Act. And everyone else has worked through their situation and returned to work. We have also had, according to our best records, 38 employees who, out of some concern that they may have had some exposure to the COVID, have been tested. And of those 38, only 1 has tested positively. And that is an employee who, through contact tracing, we have been able to determine that the exposure happened in the home, not at work. So according to our best efforts to track this information, we have no employees who have in fact tested positive from any exposure that they would have received at the library. We don't know, as Catherine shared with you, what the impact on all of this will be in the next few months on our employees because of the schools, but we do have still about 70 employees who have been authorized to work at home for all or part of the time because their work can be managed basically from their home computer. I will tell you that we are continuing to offer only 1 shift per day at all of our locations. That's part of what we've done to be able to manage with this many staff who have needed to be away from work. We still have our regular locations opened on Sunday. Our door counts are hovering at about 1/3 of our usual traffic levels. And we have set up limited occupancies. You may recall us talking about this before, where we're literally counting people coming to the door and people leaving. And it's only a handful of buildings where we have met those limited occupancy levels. So we're still counting to keep track so that when we do reach the threshold, we can make an announcement and encourage the people who are wrapping up their activity to do so and be on their way so that other people can come in. But I just wanted you to know that for the moment, we're very blessed in that we have not had any of the employees who thought they might have had an exposure or something. Everyone has fortunately tested negative.
That's such great news.
That's good to hear.
Yes.
Anything
And,
else?
I
Anything
do
else?
want to compliment many of our managers who are jumping through all kinds of hoops to keep desks covered when people do need to be off for a couple of days because they want to get a test or they're staying home and self-monitoring. We're trying to do our best to ensure that any risk is mitigated, and it falls to the managers of the various locations to step up and fill in themselves or to move the pieces on the chessboard so that we have enough staff in place to safely open our buildings for the public. And so far it's working, and a real shout out to our managers for their great effort.
Appreciate that.
Any comments or questions from the CEO on that particular point?
Yeah, thank you very much for taking a leadership role in that. I mean, this is a tough situation, and you know, you guys are being very responsive. So thank you for all your hard work.
I concur with that. Thank you. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Ray. All right, we'll move on to the next item. It's we don't have any unfinished business or new business. far as future items on agenda items, we had some discussion here that we can consider for future agenda items. Most notably, how do we address national emergencies that are unforeseen in future contract or future library events? If you have any more, please feel free to send it to the board.
Yes, I actually did send items on August 3rd to you, Judge Salinas.
Hang on for 1 second. Let me get that. Was it an email, right?
It was an email. Would you like me to?
Can you refresh my memory, please?
Yes, I actually had 5 items that I sent on August 3rd in an email to you. The first was, what directives are we following with regard to weddings and large events? If not the orders of the mayor, which state that no event over 50 can take place. That has somewhat been answered, but I could do a follow-up myself on that. Number 2, I'd said I'd like an update on the CBLC phase 2. And considering the grant is running out next year, the plans for moving it into our operations to stabilize the staff and budget, in addition to putting other fundraising mechanisms in place. Also like an update on any hiring or additional support for Nichelle that would be part of phase 2. Number 3, I know that we are under a hiring freeze, except for the positions that Jackie determines to be necessary. So it would be good for the board to know what positions are being filled. And also if we have put additional diversity hiring practices in place, since that is a priority that the organization has stated. Number 4, a couple of years ago, the staff responded to a workplace engagement survey. I don't recall an update on how some of the areas mentioned were addressed. So that would be good to know. And then number 5, I asked what happened to the Dear CEO letters. We haven't heard anything about them since we became virtual. So I would imagine that they can either be forwarded or scanned to us. So those are the items that I sent on August 3rd.
I got the email. My apologies to you. Okay. And I apologize that I didn't respond. Did you want Jackie to respond, or can we save it for? Did you want to say anything, Jackie?
Well, Judge, I would just mention that you and I have been talking about agendas from now until the end of the year. And the CBLC briefing is scheduled for the October board meeting. Just trying to understand when we will have enough of a block of time and when we will have the best available information. So that one is scheduled. There was a report given to the board about that engagement study. We can certainly pass that back out again. And on the hiring, you do see in the resolution, such as resolution 38 this evening, all of the hiring that would have been done this month. We can try to come up with a little bit more of a discussion about the strategy behind that, if that would be helpful.
Yes.
Yeah, I would like to think about and talk about what does it mean for us to really be attentive to the diversity of the number of librarians that we bring on board. I know that, just as you said, Jackie, that's something that we're going to be talking about. What is the criteria? How do we look at increasing the number of underrepresented librarians so that we can see the internal growth as well as the external work that Jessica has been pushing forward so thoughtfully? It's great.
There's a slide presentation that Jessica and EJ and other EC members are putting together right now as part of our budgeting for equity, budgeting for diversity conversation that the city is asking for. And we should be prepared to share that same information with you shortly. I think the challenge will be to try to set up some time when everyone has time to engage in the conversation. But we can certainly share that PowerPoint with you, I would say within the next couple of weeks, because we're working on it right now.
That'd be great. I do know that the intent is to have more librarians from underrepresented populations.
Absolutely.
And so it would be great to see how it's moving along and how it develops.
Certainly.
And 4 and 5, Jackie?
Let me go back to the workplace engagement survey. I wasn't asking for a
Yeah, that's number 4.
report. Yeah, I was actually asking for a follow-up of some of the areas that were found to be challenging and problematic. One was communication. The other was that there was a lot of discussion across the system of people not really understanding what it would take to get a 4 or a 5 to achieve merit. And also there was some challenges with regard to understanding what it takes to actually move up in the system to be promoted. So all of that was in as part of the results. So I was wondering what the follow-up was to the results.
Well,
of
the
the
report I'm referring to did have follow-up information, so let's get that back out again and see if what else it is you're looking for beyond that, Dr. Jett.
And the Dear CEO letters?
We don't get as many of them as we used to get, but they are being answered and they're all being saved electronically. Since you haven't been meeting virtually, we have not taken the time to pass them on to you. If you would like to read them, I'm sure we can figure out a way to make that happen.
Dr. Jett, is that what you want?
Yeah, we should be seeing those Dear CEO letters.
Okay. Yeah, you can scan those and just provide them to the board, Jackie, okay?
Judge,
And yes, ma'am.
the slide presentation that Jackie was referring to that Jessica is preparing, is that going to be shown to the board? I heard you say we had to find time.
Jessica and I have been talking about that just today, about how we're going to find time to get that in front of all of you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
It would be a great item, perhaps for a retreat. I don't know.
Virtual retreat. All right. Thank you so much, Jackie. I do appreciate that. And my apologies to you, Dr. Jett, for not responding to you earlier or sooner on your agenda items. Our next meeting is September 28th at 6:30. And I think that's all we got. Thank you so much, guys. Please be safe, okay?
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
I'm going to adjourn the meeting. God bless.
Bye.
Take care, guys.